everyone. My name is Mason Young. I'm here with the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, and I am an absolute fanatic for MAGWest. MAG is really awesome, bringing music and games together. And so we have a museum up in the Oakland area that is dedicated to the playable preservation of digital entertainment artifacts. And so that's like a bunch of gibberish, kind of, so I'll explain what it means. It means that we take all the items from the community, like you say, I have an old NES in my attic, and I don't play it anymore. I'd love for someone else to play it. You donate it to the museum. We make sure it works. We put it on the floor, and to that end, we have about 10,000 plus playable games on the floor on about 40 playable exhibits, going all the way back to the 1970s, and as recent as the Wii U, which we just put on the floor since they shot up its servers in 2023. And so we gave this presentation last year, and it was a big hit, so we wanted to do it again. This is Peripherals, a history of control, a hands-on history, since I can bring out all the peripherals. We have them in the back. And it, more or less, is an any percent speed run of the way that we play games augmented by these digital entertainment artifacts. And I have my lovely assistant, Sarah Simmons, who helped do a bunch of awesome, even deeper dive research on the artifacts that we brought out. So let's start at the beginning. Tennis for Two was one of the first games that would have had a controller. It had an oscilloscope screen, right? So they're just sending a signal, discrete components and everything. You can see what a modern rebuild of the controller would have looked like. Just have a dial and a button. Back in this era, it's really about using the things that you had because nobody's really thinking about video games. Any of these, what? What did you say? Oh, that's what I was saying. Okay, we're gonna find the proper slides. That's what I was saying.
Just keep going.
We have an updated slide deck, but we'll keep going with these slides for now. This was created all the way back in 1958 as an experiment at the Brook Laboratory over in New York. And yeah, when controls in this first era, this is created over in Stanford on the, yeah, I don't know why. The PDP was over at MIT, but yeah. Anyway, we have my old slides, then updates.
No, it's synced now.
They're good?
Yeah, it's because when I did the edits, it didn't sync, and now it does.
Now it's synced. Okay, hopefully they're synced. There we go. Problem with the internet connection though. So let me connect the hotspot. Anyway. Spots available. Wi-Fi's available. School's iPhone. No. Why is it? Oh, can we just do Hilton Honors? Hilton Honors, thank you. If you haven't already seen the code for Hilton Honors, you might get to glimpse it right now. Woohoo! Okay, so I guess we can get internet for Hilton Honors down here. That's a good thing to know for everybody. Okay, so back to where we were. The Tennis for Two was put on an oscilloscope, so it's really built out of the pieces that were around. Same with the PDP-1. PDP-1 was manufactured and sent to a bunch of the different college campuses, and a hack was decided to be created. Hey, I think I could create a game on this. It was created with a star in the middle and a gravity well. But the controller, our focus here, is just levers that attenuate to the middle. And so common things that you might find on other machinery at the time. The first time we really create a system, an arcade, that has its own buttons, they kind of did a little bit too much. As you can see, there's about 4 buttons on there, and then four lighted buttons and 4 standard buttons, and then the coin return. And this was to create, to fly a spaceship. And this would vary, for quite a few people, this was the first time they would have ever played an arcade or been able to interact with something on a screen other than you changing the channel. But it was a little too complicated. What would end up being a lot less complicated and was maybe not even going to launch as a game would be Pong. It just had a basic dial. The basic dial made it very easy to move your paddle up and down. But it would not be the first controller. This would be out at the arcade, but the first controller for the home would be a little bit more complex. There was a demo for this back in 1968 called the Brown Box that would have a similar style controller. It actually has 3 knobs on it, and we do have this one for you to come interact with. Oh, it's actually in the back. And that is the first controller that would ever been at home, so definitely check it out. It has a dial inside of this dial that's labeled as English, and if you play like table tennis or tennis, English is a way to talk about the curve on the ball. So you can actually add curve to the Pong ball. in the middle of this game, making it a lot different than Pong because you can only go up and down. In this one, you can also go horizontally. Magnavox Odyssey Shooting Gallery was a big accessory, and it had these peripherals that you'd actually put on the television screen. Fun fact, Odyssey was bought by Magnavox. It was actually created by a government program, like a government contract group called Sanders & Associates, and then sold to Magnavox. Magnavox kind of flubbed the launch in a way because they wanted people to buy Magnavox TVs. Although this system could have worked on any TV, a lot of folks thought it would only work on a Magnavox TV, and the size of the overlays and stuff were best fit on a Magnavox, so it didn't sell as well. The first time we'd ever see a steering wheel at the arcade was Grand Track 10 by Atari, just like lit up dots on a screen. If you are familiar with Museum Mécanique up on the pier in San Francisco, they sometimes have this game out. The Pong Atari C100 would be the first system that would be out in homes. It would be the commercial success, really. We'd have the Magnavox Odyssey out in homes, this one here, but this would be much more popular simply because we finally have integrated circuits, and so they could mass produce these. They actually started building the controllers and consoles for this all the way back in 1968, and they had about 500,000 of them prepared and ready to sell by 72. Things changed a lot by 75 because you can mass produce these things, and so suddenly we have a video game industry. The APF TV Fun is a good example of the copycats. They saw Pong, saw the success it was having, so this electronic company that made calculators and novelties in that, they made their own version of Pong. This one have dials, so you could change the modes of the games, and a main dial to change the game mode, but it was pretty much just variations on Pong. The Fairchild Channel F would have a very interesting controller that was plugged in and stuck into the system. That was very common at the time. The controller would be part of the system, but they realized by the second or third iteration of this that they better unplug it because this controller was very fragile, lots of engineering in this controller. You could pull it up, the plunger up, you could pull it down, you could have it have an X and Y, you could also steer it left and right, but if any of those things broke and it was plugged into your console, you have no player 2 or no player 1 anymore. This system also is the first to feature a pause button, but it was actually built on directly onto the console itself. But it was the first system with pause. The Atari CX40 was the follow-up to the CX10. This controller is the one that everybody knows. They still produce them to this day. You can go to Atari's website and buy them. You can also see we still have lots of switches and things on the console itself, turning the system on and off, which channel you're on, 3 or 4, difficulty of the game, all sorts of things, game select. If you come to the museum and you're like, oh, I want to play adventure, I hear there's an Easter egg in there. You actually have to go touch one of these dials to select the third game before you start playing to even experience that. We have the first trackball game, which is by Sega. It was a World Cup soccer game. Pretty similar to how, like graphically, to Pong, it had a green screen, but you'd be moving your players around. So it's as if you could move your paddle around to continue bouncing the ball. In television, Mattel Electronics this is a great time to talk about, you make controls out of what people have, right? So you already have a knob on the television, and so you make a controller out of a knob. So at this point, everybody has, instead of a rotary phone, we're starting to get touch dial tone phones. And so let's make a controller like that. And so we have a controller with the side buttons, it's very similar to our phones today, and a dial in the middle. There would also be overlays for these controllers, which could be really awesome and immerse you in a game better, but once you lose the overlay, if your game tells you, clip the red wire, or press the green button, and then you look down and your controller doesn't have one, it can make it really difficult to play a game.
I have it on display in the back as well.
Is it not? Oh, it's because of these. Okay, cool. So Commodore made their own controllers. This was their first attempt. We have this kind of in the middle, so it's not left-handed or right-handed, which would be a flaw of this controller. It was pretty much designed for you to be right-handed. If you weren't, you kind of would suffer with this like overreach kind of thing. You also had to hold the controller. Some of this would be remedied. Commodore, though, wasn't really thinking about ergonomics. No one wants to really grip onto a triangle that's kind of sharp. And they thought, oh, let's add a wrist pad as well. But most folks, because the connector, the 9-pin connector, was the same for your controllers, you would just bring over your CX40 or whatever controller you preferred. But that didn't stop folks from making even better controllers. You all right? I know you have lots of fun facts.
They changed the design due to a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. They get sued by Atari as well. You can fight too if you want. So we have third parties starting to make controllers to make your experience better. In this Wiko command control line, the bat-handled joystick is really neat because it has a button on the top, just in case you want to press there, and one on the side, right? So if you're left-handed, you probably are going to go ahead and switch to be the one on the top because that's going to be easier. but it had a toggle switch, so depending on which game you're playing, you might want it at different modes. We have the 3-way deluxe, which has a lot of different grip styles. And we have the trackball. So suddenly, if you wanted to play with your trackball at home, not just the arcade, we're seeing more of, what? Oh, yeah. Even more Wicco controls. Oh, yeah. This is the ColecoVision. The ColecoVision had a dial pad, but also had a space for a joystick, and so this was their version of that. Same with that 9-pin connector. It's really interesting. In the very beginning, when there's competition's really fierce, nobody had proprietary controllers. We have these crazy keypads for the Atari as well. Atari released a video keypad and the 5200 that had the keypads on them, and so of course Wicco followed with having those as well. At the end of the second generation of console gaming, there was a system called the Vectrex, Vector Graphics. It had a screen built in, so like move over Switch, move over Wii U. If you want a system with a screen in it, they did it back in 1982. I really think this console brought the arcade home. We have it over at our booth. If you've walked by it, check it out. But it has 4 buttons on it and a control, and the thing that's different is that this is a lot more like the arcade than what we've seen before, because you are holding and you're pressing a button, and this is how the joystick works at home. But this sits down in front of you, and your joystick is on the left, and that's much more like the arcade out at the the bars and the locations. The Vectrex also had some other amazing accessories, such as a light pen. If you're thinking like the mouse and the mother of all demos, and like that's when we first got the peripheral of the mouse, we actually had light pens way earlier than that on oscilloscopes and all sorts of things, but it was mainly for government things. But finally, you could have one at home with the Vectrex. And the 3D imager. Take a particular look at this amazing weird disc here. There would be one covering each eye, and as that covered each eye, you would have one eye covered, and so you'd be able to see what comes in from one side of the stereoscopic, and then one eye would be covered, and you could see the other. But it would also add color, because for a moment it would draw the blue on the screen, then the red on the screen, and then the green on the screen, so that this could provide color and 3D images. There was only 2 games for it. Mindstorm, which is actually a built-in game. This system had games built into it too, 1 game, and then you put cartridges on the side. But yeah, there was only 2 games for the 3D module. It was just recently, well, not super recently anymore, but in 2024 it was on Antique Roadshow. ColecoVision Super Action had a specific set of 2 games made to be played with these crazy controllers with the grip on them. They were trying to find a market that still has a bit of trouble in gaming, which is the sports market. They thought that these controllers would be a little bit more active. But yes, they also have overlays, which I already spoke about how you lose overlays. It can make things difficult. So 1983, as most folks might have heard of, there was a crash in the video game market. It lost about 90% of its investments. This was due to like kind of a lack of quality of games. But Atari was actually going to make a really neat accessory, a peripheral during this time called Atari Lab. It only ended up with a thermometer accessory, and then there's some like kind of like hacked accessories that you can look online. But if the market hadn't crashed, if the market hadn't crashed, we might have seen more of these sensors be created. But we had temperature. There's going to be a light sensor. Sarah, do you know about some of the other sensors? I know you did some research.
Yeah. They also were going to, before it failed, we're going to come out with a biofeedback kit as well as a crime lab forensic science kit so that you could test things at home and be like a real crime scene lab and stuff.
And if you want to see the Atari Lab interface, we do have it on the back table. Like I said, once you have your computer or you have your console, you suddenly want a controller that's going to last you and move around to different systems. And so we see groups like Suncom creating things like the totally accurate controller that promise more accuracy, more robustness, and just a general better time.
It's also on display in the back.
Yes, also on display in the back. The Nintendo Famicom, their domestic success, actually has some really awesome controllers, but they hadn't quite caught that memo that they shouldn't make the controller be part of the system. So the Famicom, the controllers can rest along with the system, but they're corded in there, so if your sibling pulls really hard, you could end up breaking player 2 or player 1 forever. You can also see there's a microphone on this controller and a volume control. And if you've ever played Legend of Zelda, there's a cute little bunny character that in the North American release you have to defeat in a different way. But in the Japanese version, you literally shout into this microphone and it will pop because it has big ears, right? So if you make a lot of noise, it'll pop. Surprisingly, the flute doesn't make it pop, but the hint makes it sound like that. Anyway. On the Famicom, there's also 3D glasses. We brought these out last year. We have them at the museum, but we didn't bring them out this year. But Nintendo has been trying to do 3D for a very long time. So they have a game called Hot Rally, and Hot Rally has a 3D mode that lets you play. It works by covering one eye rapidly, and then you can see it on the screen. We have the NES Zapper, which I think many people are familiar with because it was super popular here in North America. It was first released in gray, right before we had a bit of toy reform, where suddenly any toy gun needed to have a big bright orange cap on it. Nintendo didn't want to design a bright orange cap and send them out to everybody, so they just said, hey, if you have an old one, you're good, you're grandfathered in, but we're going to make all of the new ones, all the gray on them will be bright orange. No one will think this is a toy gun of any sort. There were also third-party extra accessories to help you with your aiming. I think this one's a bit overkill, but looks pretty awesome nonetheless. We have Robotic Operating Buddy. Gunpei Yokoi, who created the Game Boy, was also in charge of trying to help create the Nintendo Entertainment System. The entertainment system part of it was more or less not the software and the hardware in the game, and the thing that they were trying to get into the living room, it was these fun accessories that would make people not think of video games when they saw the NES initially. So one of these things that you'd see is Rob the Robot, which we have operating over at the booth. You can control Rob. He's pretty slow and clunky. Like, I'm actually moving way faster than he's moving, even in my little demo there. Today we have Stack Up going on, and we'll have Gyromite again on Sunday. But the games weren't very popular because they were really slow-paced. You can see Rob, and then he drops it, and then that presses a button, and that raises the stick there, or lowers it in this case. This was more of like a Trojan horse than anything. You'd want this really cool toy, and you'd go, okay, Rob's cool. Okay, I'm done with these games. Now what's this Mario guy? And you'd play Mario, and we all know how that goes. What? Oh, yeah.
Rob was actually created to help convince retailers to put the NES back on the shelves, because it was during the time period of everything like, we don't really want to sell video game systems.
Yeah, there's a pretty solid gap between end of 83 and 84 that no one wants anything to do with video games because they lost 90% of investments. One of those things that happened over in Japan was they created this thing called the family computer, and it was also a computer for your family. And so they thought they would bring that idea over to the United States. Industrial designer Lance Barr, who's part of Nintendo of North America, recreated all these computer accessories that would have been for the Famicom for the Nintendo Entertainment System. These would have never released. They were only shown at a trade show. But what we did get is a redesign of the NES controller that is now iconic to us. And it's really not ergonomic though, but they would learn that soon. The D-pad also has some great history. This is the first time that the D-pad was popularized, but it would have also appeared on the Game & Watch in Japan and what we call Time Out over here in the United States. The Sega Master System controllers are a pretty much a copy of what Nintendo is doing, but at the same time, they thought, okay, we want to keep the joystick in there. And so you have this screw point where you can put in a little joystick, so in case that's what you want to play. They did make a mistake that they would later fix, where the controller is coming out of the side here, which does not make it very easy to use. The light phaser. We actually didn't ever see this too much. It was way more popular in Europe and in Brazil. They had a really light release in the United States and realized the Zapper was just doing too well for them to compete. And they never released this in Japan because Japan doesn't like guns. This is the light phaser. We have it in the back as well. It completely dominated over over Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley and all the NES games in Brazil and in Europe. The Power Pad by Bandai in Japan and by Nintendo over in the EU and United States was a 12-button, two-sided pad to bring you into your games further. Family Fun Fitness is what it was labeled in the EU. And yeah, it could get you up and going. If you've played it, Track and Field is the main game for it in the United States. The NES Advantage is another accessory by industrial designer Lance Barr. It was an idea. The arcade was so popular in the United States that by the time the NES came out, they needed to make sure that they had an arcade experience that you could play at home. It also has these dials above the turbo that can have you select how fast the turbo button's being pressed. And then there's a mode that's called like slow mode. Slow mode just rapidly presses the start button and pauses. So very interesting ways to slow down your game then. Finally, some ergonomics. What? Do you want to do this one?
It's on, no, it's on display in the back.
Oh yeah, this one's on display in the back too. A lot of these are on display in the back. The NES Advantage. But yes, we have the control pad. This was known as the 3-button controller. A lot of games didn't even end up using 3 buttons. Later, we'd see fighting games needing 6 buttons, so there's a 6-button variation of this controller later. But Sonic the Hedgehog and a lot of the main titles did use all 3 buttons, but that curve was appealing to Nintendo. So they released the NES Max. Among other accessories like the NES Advantage and the Zapper, people didn't care too much about this. And although that might look like an analog stick, it's not. We call it a cycloid, and it is just a D-pad, and it's very awkward. But you can check it out. We have it. We brought it too. The NES Satellite, thank you, Sarah, for doing the research here. I've always known about the 4-score, but not about the Satellite. The Satellite was the first edition of this controller. It was an IR controller, so if your dog or your mom or your dad or somebody walks in front of the TV, you lose all 4 players, which isn't very good. So they quickly decided to make the 4-score, which is a plugged-in version of this. And you can turbo everybody, which I think is also really weird. So across the board turbo. But yeah, IR controllers like this were pretty awesome. I loved one I had for the Super Nintendo. But yeah, as soon as somebody walks in front of you, they're not just covering the TV, they're also covering your inputs, and you're not going to win at Mario Kart like that.
Yes, the Satellite required 6-cell D battery, so it made it more
Yeah.
expensive choice.
D batteries, no. Rob requires like a bunch of batteries too, but 1 D battery, but not 6. The Power Glove. This is an accessory a lot of folks like to think Nintendo made. Nintendo did not create this accessory. It was actually ended up being created, like licensed and distributed by Mattel in the United States and by PAX in Japan. It was a big part of the movie The Wizard. I love the Power Glove. It's so bad. He wouldn't know how true that would end up ringing. A lot of folks think that the Power Glove works similar to the Wiimote and that it works with infrared. It actually works on a different way. It's sonic. It has 3 speakers that are on the TV as part of this sound array, and then 2 microphones on the controller itself that can then position based on when it hears the tones that come from the 3 things. This makes it actually more accurate for 3D space than the Wiimote, but it only had 1 game, Glove Ball, that really put it to the test. The big promise they made was that it would be mapped for every NES game, and Mattel wanted to release it really quick, and so they really, really sloppily mapped it to the existing NES games, and it wasn't a big thing. But it's packed full of technology, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time with it. It has fiber optics in it that when you curve these fingers, it can tell just how much you're bending a finger. Really, really amazing stuff for, you know, yeah. Well, yeah, it's an optical sensor. So there's light going through and then an optical sensor on the other end, and based on how much you bend, it lowers the amount of light, and so it can tell how much you're bending your fingers. Really cool. No game uses it. They will map like A to 1 button or whatever, and it does have a bunch of buttons on the top, so it really was a glimpse into the future, and I think that's why it sold so well. Here's another glimpse into the future that was never to be. We have head-mounted displays, and we do voice control. Fire! Voice, you know, recognition and stuff works a lot better now. But yeah, this was talk yourself out of a tough situation. Those situations would be whatever firing games. It didn't have its own special game, but it is essentially a zapper that you just say fire and then it shoots. So if you want to play Duck Hunt with your voice, this was the way to do it. The Cheetah Annihilator by the company called Cheetah, I don't think they're trying to annihilate cheetahs, is of note to me because one of its crazy name, but also we have suction cups. Suction cups actually changed the game a lot because if you can get your controller to stay, that's a lot more like the arcade. Otherwise, you have to hold your controller or kind of like press it down. This was a popular choice for the Commodore 64 game system, but that was not a popular choice in itself. There was also a different version, the 125 Plus, that was a nice black finish, and you can see this glorious left-handed, right-handed shared buttons. This does confuse every person that comes into the museum when we have these left-hand, right-hand controllers because they think each button does something different, but they're the same button, right? So, the Miracle Piano Teaching System. We also have this one out at our booth. This was, in the 1990s, it was created for the NES, DOS, Macintosh, Genesis, a whole bunch of different things. And it was a system to teach you to play the piano. You'd plug in this actual piano into your system, and then you'd pick either the children or adult lessons and learn how to play. A lot of these get advertised more as a game than a learning system. This one was straight up just advertised as a learning system. And I think that's how you find success when you make accessories like these.
It was also the most expensive peripheral you could buy for a home system at $500.
The piano does work completely by itself, and yeah, if you didn't have $500 back then also is like $2,000 now, or like at least like 3,000, or I mean, or at least 1,500. But yeah, it has really cool. It has only 6 different voices, but they all sound pretty crazy. So the Super Famicom comes out, and the Super Famicom is a follow-up to the Nintendo Entertainment System. And over in Japan, they use these bright-colored, awesome buttons, and I love them. But in the North American market, I was a kid, so I would have loved them as a kid. But they tried to make these accessories look a little bit more adult, and so we would see this recreation. Again, it's the North American designer Lance Barr. He did this really cool thing where, since we don't have the colors, and most Super Nintendo games would map, like the Japanese version of them, Mario RPG, for example, one of my favorite games, it actually uses these colors when you're selecting. But then when they made the North American release, they had to change it to these purple colors, and that kind of loses a little bit. But in order to make it so that the player doesn't have to look down at the controller, the top X and Y are concave, and the bottom A and B are convex. And that's actually a pretty awesome improvement of the controller itself. I wish Nintendo still did that sometimes.
It was also the birth of the L and R buttons.
Incredibly important. Yes, we get L and R buttons for the first time ever. Not to be left behind, Nintendo typically has about 2 systems out at a time. They still let people develop for the NES, but they didn't want people to be jamming their hands on controller corners. And so there was the Dogbone, which came out with the Control Deck, which was a relaunch of the NES, with top loading. Because if you know or not, this one actually is way more robust. If you have one of these, your NES probably still works and you've never had to replace your pin connector. If you have the old one, because it's the front loading and kind of like is trying to mimic a VHS, they are really prone to break. But there's lots of folks that know how to repair them, including us at the museum. The Atari Jaguar, sorry I say Jaguar funny. I try my best, but it's a weird word for me. They didn't, like Atari, the 80s is calling, your controller overlays. You brought them into the 90s. They are really cool, and they do add something to games, but again, when you lose them, it can become tough. The Jaguar would also see a CD accessory, and Rayman would release on that console. Oh.
Go back. The bottom picture there, they actually had 2 different designs for it. One with just the 3 face buttons, and the other one later came with the 6 face buttons. They did that to compete with everyone else when they started coming out with fighting games and stuff that required the more buttons.
Yeah, you can't play fighting games without 6 buttons. This is actually something we run into on the museum floor all the time because we have a 3-button controller and a 6-button controller. And then people will be playing the fighting game and I'll say, hey, one of you has a really, really unfair advantage. What do you think it is? And they'll say, I don't know. And I'm like, well, one of you can actually use all your attacks. So yeah, 6-button controllers, awesome. How many buttons do we think, just shout the number out, how many buttons do we think are on a controller nowadays? A modern controller, how many? 20. Yeah, whoever said 20 got it. It's around 20. Yeah, 20, right? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 at this point. We would have 13 with the L and R buttons. Just an L, just an R, that's not enough. We need L2 and R2. And we get them with the Sony PlayStation, but we would have seen very shortly the release of, oh, go back, oh, so you got some facts.
So, yes, yeah. Actually, I don't know if you guys know that I'm sorry if I butcher his name, Taiyu Goto is the one who chose the symbols for the triangle, square, O, and X. They each have their own representation and why he chose them. The triangle represents viewpoint and direction of player head. The square represents piece of paper to be used for menus or documents. And circle and X, or cross as they called it, represent yes and no, but it was reversed in North America because we like to be different. And X means yes.
X means yes, said no one other than us for some reason. That can be really tough too. At the museum, you put up a Japanese game and it says like, press continue or go forward, and you're like X, and then it takes you back and you're like, what is happening?
Also, the original design for the PlayStation controller was gonna be very rectangular and square, but the Sony designers were like, no corporate. We want this design.
Yeah, gotta have some grips. Speaking of grips, why not make it all grip? This is the AppMark controller for the Apple and Bandai collaboration known as the Pippin. The Pippin was not a huge success, probably because it had a super high price tag, and Namco, oh, you got a lot? You got a lot.
So it wasn't called the Pippin. The computer that it was used for was called Pippin. This is just the AppMark controller. It is often confused for being the Pippin.
Okay. It is the controller for the Pippin, though. We have analog sticks now. Woo! And not only analog sticks, we got flavors, right? We have lots of different colors for this accessory. Nintendo really was trying to make sure that the players could really be involved with what they were getting accessory-wise.
The birth of the Z button.
The Z trigger, yes. And the only controller you need 3 hands to hold. This was actually really thoughtful. Nintendo's typically pretty thoughtful, but then the execution of it can be kind of goofy. It was so that if you're playing a 2D game, you could hold it like a normal controller, and then otherwise you can be left-handed or right-handed, grabbing the middle. Yeah. Yes, it's very strange, though. You can use 2 controllers for 2 analog sticks on quite a few N64 games, and then you've got to like hold 2 controllers.
It really sucked because there was a lot of people who specifically like to hold the controller in a certain way, but not all games that were made for this controller actually, stuck with the same layout. So some games you had to forcibly use the analog stick, and the other one you had to use the D-pad. So you were finding yourself switching back and forth depending on the game that you were playing.
This one's all you, Sarah.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know too much about this.
In my deep dive, I found some weird, cool-looking controllers here. The ASC2 Sphere 360 and the Space Orb 360. The Space Orb is for PC, and the Sphere was for the PlayStation. So, the Sphere, you can see, had the standard kind of PlayStation layout, but it also had this giant orb that you could push, pull, and tilt in multiple directions. Why they added that on top of the D-pad, I don't know.
This also gets rid of L1 and L2, so Sony was like, well, we want to compete with this controller. It was supposed to be for flight games, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they had to move L1 and L2 onto the controller, as you can see there.
Yeah, it came with its own demo disc, too, which I thought was really cool.
It's a good one to do. All right, we have dual analog, something we'll see Nintendo actually copy in the same positioning like a decade later. But dual analog and toggling the analog allows you to finally play 3D games and control your camera. This is a huge thing. My personal take on one of the reasons that we saw the Dreamcast not really take off, although it was super powerful in the beginning, is it doesn't have any camera controls. Even the N64 has these yellow buttons for the camera control. If you've played Sonic Adventure recently, you can swoop the camera 90 degrees at a time with the L and R buttons, but you don't have granular control, so they made the remake.
So I know we all know about DualShock and the Rumble, but for the dual analog, actually in Japan got the Rumble before us in this controller.
We would see a Rumble accessory made for the N64 though really early. Did we not make a slide for it?
We do.
Yeah. Oh, it's later. Oh, well, they hadn't made it yet because we do these in time order. Game.com, Tiger. You remember the Tiger games? Well, they also were the first to add a inductive touch to a game. Shout outs to the game Lights Out, if anybody knows it. Anyway, Lights Out also gets its premiere on Game.com. So Dance Dance Revolution, woo! Shout out to GameSaru bringing all the rhythm games and MAGWest for making that happen. This is just an ultimate game, right? I will just quote the announcer from the game. This is a game where you use your feet. Speaking of musical games, we also have Guitar Freaks by Konami. We have the controller out here, and it is a bit, is it as hefty as
No, it's actually very, very light.
There you go.
It's much lighter than the Guitar Hero controller.
We only have 3 buttons.
Definitely smaller, as you can see on my size, right?
So why did Guitar Freaks not just take off, right? Genius. Only 3 buttons. Konami games at this time kind of have this difficulty to them, and very much so this music choice to them. I personally love it, as a big fan of DDR. But the secret sauce to guitar-themed games would be rock music, and Harmonix would do that in 2005. All right, we finally get the Dreamcast controller and VMU. The Dreamcast controller is glorious, right? If you ever think the Wii U was the first to have a screen on it, nah. The VMU is a memory card that also has a separate screen on it. You could take these, if you see their connector there is actually made so that they can plug into each other. You could have your Chow from Sonic on your little Tamagotchi-like system here, and you could trade with each other in class until the teacher took it away from you. You can also get 2 memory cards in there, so you can do swaps. It was pretty awesome. Oh, and talking earlier, Sega made the mistake of putting a thing out at the side of their controller. They're like, nah. This time, you can either have it go down or up, because this comes out of the bottom of the controller, which can be convenient sometimes, or it can be tucked to the top of the controller. Really nice stuff. The Switch 2 finally did it with those 2 USB-C ports. All right, somebody amigos, maracas. This also has a pad on the ground. These have IR sensors. We have them in the back, so you can take a look at them. But they have infrared sensors that are just made to tell how far they are from the ground. So you can shake high, shake medium, shake low. You got some extra facts?
It actually wasn't an IR sensor.
Oh, what kind of sensor is it?
It
I
was
was
a
wrong.
magnetic sensor.
Okay.
So there was a pad on the floor. This is for the home version. There was a pad on the floor that had a sensor in it, and then it would just use 3D space to detect where the maracas were at. So you just kind of shake it over it.
And this one's actually rather difficult because not only is there the shaking, there's pressing, there's the height, and there's the stepping. And so lots of parts of your brain, you're doing the tap in the belly and stuff. And it had really, really awesome characters. Sega is really great about that.
And if you didn't want to annoy your family, you could unscrew the top and take the rattle out and play quietly.
More infrared, except for I was totally wrong about the last one. Thank you for the fact check there, Sarah. Game Boy IR allowed you to do things like mystery gift in Pokemon Gold and Silver, where you could get a free gift, not from the other person, but with the other person. You each got a gift. And there was these things called Pokemon Pikachu, which were pedometers that you could walk around with. Yeah, you could also shake them. That was not Nintendo's goal, but we all got more wrist strength. Or we went outside, which was awesome. And these were very, very popular. You got more on this here?
Yeah, it actually was more than just gold and silver. It was crystal as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Crystal's one is this one in the middle, which had color as well, which is cool. The N64 Transfer Pack. I know a lot of folks know this one for Pokemon Stadium, and for that it is glorious, and Pokemon Stadium 2 for Gold and Silver, where, you know those mystery gifts? You get like furniture and you could decorate your room and you'd see them in 2D. You plug that into your N64, and you could see your room you designed come to life in 3D. I didn't have an N64, and so I built my room and stuff, and I had no idea I'd ever see it come to life. I go over to a friend's house, I plug in my game, and it was really, really cool feeling. But even cooler to me than that is Mario Golf. This was an RPG, like you build your own character, and if you plug your game into Mario Golf, you could actually bring your character from the Game Boy game into the N64 game, which was more focused on like Nintendo's iconic characters. Yeah, this one's not very clean. Let's clean that. We'll put it in restoration. But yeah, really, really cool accessory, and we'd see Nintendo follow up with this with lots of interesting variations on it. This was only in Japan, but it's very cool. We have it up here. There was a game called Tetris 64, not to be confused with the new Tetris, which is the best Tetris, fight me. But N64, Tetris or Japan had this biosensor. Nintendo always likes to play around with accessories that can somehow make your life better, health better. And this would clip to your ear, and as you get your heart rate up, as Tetris is starting to hurt you, it gets faster based on your heart rate. So it's going to try to teach you to relax by putting you under more stress. And it's pretty awesome.
Many people actually would, instead of putting it on the ear like it was intended, would put it on their finger just to get more of a reading.
Yeah, it uses, I want to believe, I need to do check the sensors, but I think it uses an IR sensor and a small light, and it's just shooting it through your ear, and it's checking for blood flow through your ear. And so since I have earlobes, some people don't have earlobes, you might want to put it in different things. They did say they were making a finger accessory for the Wii that never got launched. I'll make a deep dive page about that one day. So yeah, we have DualShock now. Want to talk about DualShock? You were talking about it a little bit, but we have Rumble. We have Rumble, not just like normal Rumble though. We have Rumble on 2 sides, which is pretty awesome. They put it, here we go. We have Rumble here and Rumble here to its side. These are the same kind of module. And so suddenly you can have a and pan that. Also, this is the re-release of the PlayStation. It was called the PlayStation 1. You might have seen it before. Had a nice clamshell accessory. Random fun fact about that peripheral, that clamshell. That clamshell was actually part of the recipe for making your own portable console from like 2010 onward. And so what was a really, really abundant accessory and pretty easy to find in the 2010s is now really expensive because everybody cannibalized them to make their own portable consoles. The Nintendo GameCube. This is a very beloved controller. It introduces Z on top right, very similar to like an R1. There's not one on the other side. The GameCube would have, do I have a page for it? No, I don't have it. The GameCube would have an accessory that plugs the Game Boy Advance into it as well, kind of a follow-up to this N64 accessory. But yeah, super beloved. Nintendo did just re-release this controller with the C button on it for the Switch 2. Have you heard of the Panasonic Q? All right, wow, this audience is very knowledgeable. the Computer History Museum had one out last year. We don't have a Panasonic Cube, but we've got the controller. This is a GameCube controller that instead of being Nintendo branded is Panasonic branded. And why is that? Well, this is the rumor. It's really hard to find facts on this, but there's a bunch of from the horse's mouth, which we'll follow. At a trade show, when Sony is working with Nintendo on the Sony PlayStation accessory for the Super Nintendo, they sign a deal with a company called Panasonic. They are actually looking to have a disc reader for their future console, which would be the GameCube. And in that deal, they say, we won't ever release a DVD player version of this console. You can do that. And so this is the GameCube that plays DVDs. And this is the Panasonic Q's controller. You also could get a remote and stuff for it, but they were nice. If you are making electronics, please put all the buttons on the system. They did a good.
They're super rare, so please be careful when you come up and touch this controller.
Yes. Would you like to talk about this one, or I can?
Oh, yeah.
There's a very beloved game called Rez that has a really interesting accessory called the Transvibrator. The Transvibrator would plug into the second player's slot, and along with the rhythm, it would buzz. And so you could put that in your pocket, put it, wherever, and it would go along with the music and be a really
Rid your mind of those
interactive.
dirty thoughts, please.
Hey, that's only you. No, it would make this game even more immersive. This game is beloved enough that we've seen it come out back in VR, but where's our Rumble? Where's the Transvibrator? Bring it back. So Xbox comes to the market. We might know the story, but I'm going to say it anyway. We have Bill Gates reaching out to the president of Sony, and the president of Sony stands strong and says, we will never give Microsoft a dev kit for the PlayStation 2. So Microsoft's wanting to stomp into the industry, 20 months later releases their own console called the Xbox. They had been working with Sega, and so I think they were inspired with like the larger size controller, perhaps from the Dreamcast, because it's a bit larger size controller, but they maybe made it a little bit too big. It was the butt of a lot of playground jokes in my world, because it was just huge. So they learned their lesson and created the Xbox Controller S the next year, which was a little bit more form-fitted one. Not to be beat by the 4-button crawl back, they added the black and white button, so it still has 6 buttons on the face. A lot of folks, they ended up putting the buttons up to the top. It also has really nice bounce back triggers, which you also find on the GameCube, but they're a bit higher quality on Xbox, in my personal opinion. GameCube finally has a wireless controller. Again, very beloved, but yes, we know it. It's that. Sony doesn't want to be left out of this 4-player action, so there's very few Sony PlayStation 2 2-player games. There's also a nice L one for the PlayStation we didn't mention, but we have this one with us, so that's why I have a slide for it. But what I think is interesting is this one allows for 4 memory cards. So you all bring your data if you're playing Phantasy Star Online together. Xbox cordless, I don't think I brought this one this time, but a lot of the accessories would get built, and then like Logitech built this, and then they were like, oh dang, we forgot that there's memory card slots on the Xbox, and so there was a secondary accessory for adding, so kind of split accessory stuff there. The Nintendo Wii would add motion control for the masses. I dare you go to any retirement community and try to not find the Wii bowling that is set up there. It's set up there. And we had great accessory flexibility here. Each remote would have the ability to plug in a different accessory, and the nunchuck was a key one there. We'd see the nunchuck and the zapper frame for Link's crossbow training. This is actually, I mentioned Lance Barr a whole bunch. He stopped by California Extreme just a few weeks ago, and he came by the museum maybe a year ago. But it's really cool that we have an industrial designer that worked for Nintendo that we've probably all touched a lot of this stuff. This was his last project that he worked on before he retired, was the zapper shell. The Wii Motion Plus would come out to kind of help. If you played with the Wii, the accuracy is a little missing. So this added another accelerometer, and or actually, is it accelerometer or gyroscope? Do you know? Gyroscope? Thank you for that. So it adds another gyroscope, making it a lot easier to control the menu, and Wii Sports Resort and other games that wanted to use motion control more. It would have happened even earlier, but it's fun to talk about. These cases, the Wiimote rubber protector, would be sent out to everyone, because even though there was these awesome straps, those straps could break, and then you'd say, Nintendo, you owe me a TV. And so they were like, no, we're going to send you all these covers so that when you throw them at each other's heads and your TVs, they will not do anything.
They were also considered the most durable covers
They're
for
incredibly
controllers. It's hard to break these unless you take scissors to them.
We get a lot of donations of those too, because people are like, I don't use these. This controller is really interesting to me. We have one in the back. Nintendo decided to copy the dual analog stick on the bottom. And I think this might be the only time that they did that. But it was the Wii Classic Controller Pro. We have DJ Hero up here, if you've never tried it out. It's a nice little turntable here with its fader and a dial, and you would be able to play the not as super successful DJ Hero following Harmonix's success with the Guitar Hero game. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left, so we're gonna like pick up the speed so we can start playing with the controllers. I don't know if there's a panel directly after us, but most likely. Pokewalker, it's the sequel to the Pokemon Pikachu that we saw. It comes with Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It has the IR in it. You can put whatever Pokemon on it, which is awesome. Hey, PlayStation Move, it's the Wii. No, it's not. It's PlayStation Move. It's actually way more accurate. It tracks the light, and it requires the camera. Connect Adventures. This was the fastest selling and most popular accessory. Now they're gone, right? They're in like every museum has at least one because there's always an interactive exhibit that uses one, right? But yeah, this was the fastest selling accessory for a while. The Wiimote has lots of different versions. I have the Lego one. I'm a big fan of Lego, and so this is a version of the Wiimote controller that you could build Legos on. It actually has like a Lego thing on the back too for the battery. We start to see lots and lots of VR headsets. Did we bring down my headset?
We did not.
I didn't bring down my headset. But if you haven't seen a headset or whatever and you want to check one out, I got one. But the controllers have evolved, and they have their own tracking devices. We see the cameras move on the outside of them. This has changed really rapidly, and one of the reasons that it got adopted really quickly, treadmills. We've seen a lot of weird development of treadmill, early use in military. We organized this. Yeah, I've got to mention the It's really just an Android phone that everybody could develop for. I backed the Kickstarter. Towerfall was a great game for it, but most of these games got swept up into actual consoles. This was an actual console though, but it was, your phone would be more powerful than it next year, which is kind of a big flaw. Its controller's back there. Definitely check it out. And I do like how they used the name of the console on its buttons. The Quad Stick was a successful Kickstarter. We're in the middle of Kickstarter phase right here for the 2010s. The Quad Stick would allow paraplegics and all sorts of disabled folk to play games on their computer. And we'd actually see this pattern. This is actually like kind of the wave we're in now, is accessibility. So Google Cardboard would allow accessibility to VR. Simpler games would work, of course, and now when we saw the evolution for like the Quest and these stand-free ones, this would have your phone in it. Super recommended game if you haven't played it. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. It's just simple enough that one person is in VR and one person's not, and that bridging of the worlds makes for a really fun game. Pokemon Go Plus. Pokemon Go really took the world by storm in 2016 and had more players than it had originally ever played Pokemon within its first month, which is just crazy to think of as someone that really loves Pokemon. But this would let you spin walkers and catch Pokemon away from your phone or without your phone open. The Joy-Cons for the Nintendo Switch have IR on them. They can be separated from the controller. They can be used as individual things. They have lots of different colors. This is kind of par for the course for Nintendo at this point. Not to be beaten by Google Cardboard, perhaps, or just because it's a lot of fun. Nintendo uses the IR and the screen and the customizable of the Switch, the way it can be taken apart, to let you build lots of different accessories, like this little robot that would walk around based on the rumble, a fishing rod that you'd play a fishing game with that you built, the house, a piano, lots of really cool things that you'd build out of cardboard. I think this would have been more successful if they weren't selling cardboard for $80. But if it had a better price point, I think this might have taken off a lot better. But they are really cool. If you can get your hands on one, not for $100 now, I definitely suggest playing them. Microsoft has the adaptive controller, so finally your Quad Stick, you're not stuck to just playing your PC games. You can plug your Quad Stick into this adaptive controller. You can pretty much plug any accessory into it, and you can map them directly to your Xbox's buttons. This is awesome. Pokeball Plus, they released it again. This is mainly for a Switch game called Hey Eevee or Hey Pikachu, but it sells mainly because it has Mew in it. And if you didn't make it to Toys R Us back in, I think, 2001, you don't have a Mew. So this was the way to get Mew correctly that they gave us again. We have the Ring-Con. This was super popular during the pandemic since we were all locked inside. The Ring-Con was a very, very, very hot item, so you could still have exercise. It uses the Breath of the Wild engine, so it's very interesting. We have the phone revolution happening, as I know a lot of us are like kind of in denial of it, but this is the Razer's, the Kishi Razer, and I have the Backbone by Backbone Labs. Just makes your phone into a controller. This is particularly poignant now that we have cloud gaming. PlayStation 5, not to be left out of the accessibility revolution, they created their own very unique-looking access controller. It also can plug in pretty much any accessory and read its inputs and go for that. We have the PlayStation Portal, which is a very interesting peripheral because it is kind of your phone and the thing we just showed you, but it's PlayStation made it. And so it was a hot item for about one holiday season, and I think they're pretty available now. We have the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. They're a little bit bigger, and they have mice on them. If you haven't seen them, I'm definitely going to play Dragon Drive. The release of it is a very mouse game. Anyway, the test drive for it's today. But thank you, everyone, for making it through this any percent speed run of controllers and the way that we play games. We have all sorts of accessories up here. Did my Power Glove page? No. Oh, yeah, we already talked about it. We got the Power Glove up here if you wanted to take a photo or just be kind with it. And we have a lot of the accessories in the back. We also have an awesome person that visited that brought out the GameCube Sammy controller and this awesome weird racing controller. Definitely take a look at those. I'm going to go back there so I can answer questions. But thank you so much for coming. And I always show this GIF at the end of my presentations if I can. I didn't get to show it the last one because you're all crazy. But this is from Mario 3D World. And as soon as you get close to the goal sprouts wings and runs away from you. Whenever you're working on a project or hoping for the next big thing, always remember this. Because as soon as you think you're there, boom, scope creep, etc. The goal runs away from you. But just like Peach is doing here, at least I think, is have fun while you're in the chase. So thank you so much for coming out to the panel. I hope to see you at the museum. I'll be in the back to answer questions.